Hi guys, I'm here today with another awesome story for you guys, and this is Kyla. Hi Kyla.
Hi.
And Kyla was amazing and offered to share her story with you guys in order to inspire and help you guys see another person's perspective on how you can transform your relationship with food. We had a couple of other stories in the last month, and I know you guys really like those, so we have another one today. And Kyla and I actually worked together one on one for a bit, which was really great. And it's really awesome to have her here, kind of reflecting back on everything that she's been through. So, Kyla, let's start off with you sharing a little bit about your history with food. You know, what so many women out there can relate to. Like, what were you going through? What was really hard for you?
Yeah. So I have always been very slim. I was very skinny for like all of my childhood and adolescence. And when I got to college, I became vegetarian, which was based like completely on like a moral thing. It had nothing to do with weight loss. But around that time, I just started to get really interested in nutrition. And I sort of took that to like a really huge extreme. And I was so used to being this like tiny little petite little girl. And like also around that time, I started to notice like I started to gain weight a bit. And it really probably wasn't that much weight, but in my head, it looked like I was like blowing up. And so I started to get really, really obsessive about what was in my food. And like because I wasn't eating meat, I was always freaking out about what types of vitamins and minerals were in my food. And sort of everything was in the name of health. But I was really interested just like in losing weight. And so that continued for like several years. And then eventually I started binge eating, which like was just backfiring from restricting my food so much. And probably after like maybe like 3-ish years of restricting my food and like then starting to binge eat, I was binge eating like almost every night. And I like hated my body and I was exercising more than ever. And I think on the outside to other people, I looked like healthier than ever because I was like at my leanest and I was like cutting out all these different foods from my life, and always like preaching about nutrition. But I really like couldn't stand the way I was eating, and I was secretly binge eating every night, and I hated the way that I looked. And um, eventually, I found you, and everything had changed from there.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing all of that. And I think one thing that's really interesting that you mentioned is how you kind of had this image on the outside of being the like healthy, fit girl, but then on the inside you really weren't that. And can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit more about what that was like and kind of where did it, like, why did you feel like you had to uphold that like vision or like that image, I guess, on the outside for other people?
Yeah. So I didn't really like realize this until at some point when during my time that I was working with you, but I realized that like the reason that I had to look or that I wanted to look so perfect on the outside was because I just did not envy any part of who I was as a person. And I figured that like the only way that I could get people's respect or attention was to have a perfect body because I figured that like no one would love me for who I was as a human. And I didn't like anything about my personality or like
Mm,
what I was doing with my life. Even though I was doing really amazing things, I just didn't have like any sense of like self-worth.
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
so I figured like, all right, well, people aren't going to like me for who I am, then I might as well look incredible.
mm-hmm,
And I drove myself insane during that
mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So because you kind of didn't have that like core self-esteem down, you were really just trying to get that from your body, which I think is so common and so many of us do that. And I think that that also comes from just society kind of like telling
Hmm.
us that that's how we're going to get love and that's how we're going to get attention and that's how we're going to feel like lovable is by having this great body. And so we forget, hey, it's not really about that. Like we need to kind of cultivate love for all of these other parts of who we are, and we don't even really
Hmm.
focus on it.
Yeah, completely.
So tell us more about the binging because I know that that's something that you mentioned that you kept secret and I know I kept secret, and most women keep that secret. So if you don't mind sharing, just to kind of like get the cat out of the bag, like what was that like for you? What were you binging on? What was it like after a binge? Were you just trying
Mm.
to go to another diet and fix it? Like what was that? You said it was for years that this was happening. So what was that like for you?
Oh, yeah. Binging was for sure like the most painful part of the whole process. I think at first it started with just like it was really connected emotionally. I mean, like it always is, but at first it was just sort of like here and there, like once every few weeks or something. And I would notice myself like sort of keep going back to the bag of chips or whatever it was. Um, and sort of thinking like what's wrong with me? Like why am I still eating? Like I'm not hungry. Like I feel sick and I'm still eating. Um, and then eventually like it was almost every night, and because I was restricting my food so much, I was like I wouldn't ever keep like cookies or chips or anything that was even slightly unhealthy in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I would binge eat on like a jar of peanut butter. Like that was like the most indulgent thing I would allow myself to eat. And it was really amazing. Like once I started working with you, I realized like I don't like eating peanut butter right out of the jar. And like I realized like it doesn't taste good. But that
Mm-hmm.
like during my binging days, like I was thinking about peanut butter all day. And I'm like I
Mm.
wanted to eat a half a jar in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, so there was that. Like I was like binge eating on like healthy foods. But then a lot of the time, if I was like at a party or some kind of event where there was food out, like it's usually like kind of these unhealthy foods like cookies or cake, chips, whatever it is. And I would like binge eat those, like sort of in public, almost um, like I would take like two cookies on my plate and then go back for one more and one more and one more. So
Yeah,
it
like
looked like I
you
wasn't
kind of
eating.
pulled it off, but like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it looked like I wasn't eating like 100 cookies in one night, but I was. And just feeling like afterwards, like I would just feel so sick. Like if I was at home in my apartment, I would, oh, like I would sometimes like eat like my roommate's food, which like my roommate and I like we had like our own food. It's not like we
Mm.
shared groceries, and that was like so shameful to me. But like
Mm-hmm.
she kept like chocolate in the house, and it would drive me insane. Like how am I supposed to focus if there's chocolate in the cabinet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just like really thinking about that all day. And
I
so
remember
yeah,
that too with like roommates' food in college. Like sometimes I would have some of it, but not enough so that they'd notice it was gone, you know?
yes,
Yeah. It's crazy
yes,
how we all do the same things.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's really really crazy. And I would just feel so shameful afterwards of like I can't believe I'm secretly eating my roommate's food. Like this is insane. And I would like stand in front of the mirror and look at my stomach and think like, oh my God, I for sure just gained like 10 pounds from that one binge. And just trying to like hide my bloat and just planning the next day of like, okay, tomorrow, like no more sugar. I'm not going to eat sugar for at least 3 weeks. And then maybe at the end of those 3 weeks, I'll like reward myself with a piece of chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that never worked, of course. Like the next day I would binge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, just like really planning like how I was gonna eat. I would hit the gym early in the morning. I'd like get up at 6 a.m. and like go running. Um, and yeah, just really trying to like work out the hate of the self hate. And
Mm.
it unfortunately never worked.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
and it was just like that cycle over and over and over again.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing some of that. I know so many people are probably like, oh, yes, I do that too. And
Yeah.
it's probably so nice for them to hear that, like, other people do these things.
Yes.
Um, okay, cool. So let's talk about how you started to turn this around. So you did the intuitive eating challenge first, right? Before we worked together.
Yeah.
So what even brought you to like this idea of intuitive eating? Like, why did that stick out to you? And then like, how did you start to like make that transition?
Yeah. I think like I really didn't understand what intuitive eating was, or know that it was like a concept in and of itself. I guess I thought that like that was a thing that you invented. Um, but
I wish I did.
um, but I think I like stumbled upon one of your articles on like Mind Body Green or something about binge eating or emotional eating. And then like, God, I remember the night when I like signed up for the intuitive eating challenge. Oh, such a bad night. I was eating my roommate's ice cream,
Mm.
and like I had eaten so much, like even previous to that, that I was like, I really thought I was going to throw up. Like I felt so sick, and I could not stop eating the ice cream. And like I just like broke down. I remember like I'm on my laptop in the kitchen crying and like putting in my credit card information for the intuitive. Um, but no, I had I guess I just really liked the idea of like seeing your work and being like, wow, this person eats cheese and chocolate and like champagne, and like she doesn't eat all of it at once. Like that's crazy. Like how does it happen? And
Hmm.
just really being interested in like how I could, because I knew like I would see other people just like eat one bowl of cereal, and that was just mind blowing to me. Like how do you
Yeah.
stop at bowl?
Right.
Um, and but I knew that like it was possible, and so I really like wanted a taste of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then what were there? Do you mind actually pulling your hair back on the speaker side?
Yeah.
I think it's a little crackly on my end. Okay, let's see
Okay.
if that's
Is that
better. Okay,
better?
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great, thanks. Um, and so what were your first steps to that really helped you kind of become more of an intuitive eater?
Mm,
And if when you're thinking about this, if you also think of like roadblocks and things that didn't work well, feel free to share those too. We'll kind of I want to hear both.
yeah. Um, I think like one thing that was huge for me was meditation, and actually taking time to sit down with myself and listen to my thoughts and listen to what my body and my intuition were saying, because I had spent so much time, and like all binge eaters spend so much time ignoring what our body is feeling and
Mm-hmm.
ignoring our thoughts and ignoring what we want, so that we can have this dream body and this dream life. Um, and actually taking time to listen to what was coming up for me was really, really huge. And it just helped me really understand like what things were triggering for me
Mm.
that triggered me into binge eating. So, like, for example, I would binge eat when I was bored. And it wasn't the boredom that triggered it. It was like the idea that I had of being bored. And I felt that like because I was bored at home, I'm like a loser. I have no friends, and like everyone else is out doing these amazing things, and I'm not. And that's what made me feel emotional. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just learning to be able to sit with boredom and be okay with being bored was huge for me,
Mm.
or be okay with being whatever emotion.
Not judging it. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, and I think just like really being slow with my food, and not so much like mindful eating necessarily of like tasting every single flavor of every single thing that you eat, but just with paying attention to how my body was feeling like in each moment of my meal
Mm-hmm.
was a really big deal,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so used to overeating and to eating to the point of feeling sick that I just didn't know what it felt like to be comfortably full.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember like my first meal where I stopped when I felt just comfortable, and it was I felt naked, like I really felt like I was
Mm.
like without armor. Um,
Mm.
and because I was so used to just like stuffing down all my feelings with tons of food, and then I remember eating this meal and just stopping and thinking like what if an emotion comes up, and like now I don't have food to weigh it down, and I just felt so like scared. But it was
Mm.
also really freeing of knowing that like I don't feel like shit right now. Like after a meal, like that's crazy.
And how did you learn to handle all those feelings that would come up that you'd been shoving down for so long?
um, oof. It was a lot. I did a lot of journaling. Again, lots of meditation. Things that really got me like feeling through my thoughts versus trying to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was always trying to exercise away my feelings or eat away my feelings or just ignore them somehow. But instead, just like sitting with them and recognizing like that they are just feelings, and like locating like, okay, well, like where do I feel this? Is it in my stomach, in my chest, in my throat? And really learning to like separate me from the feeling, and just knowing that like if I feel sadness, it's just a feeling. Like I am not sadness. I'm not embodying sadness. It's just that like it's just a sensation that
It's
comes
a
up.
feeling and it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for people who binge, and I know this was the way I was when I binged, it was like I didn't even, everything you're talking about is so true that it's just like bringing awareness to it and even being able to recognize and name feelings. And I know when I was binging a lot, I didn't even get there. It was just like, oh no, something doesn't feel good, immediate food. It was just like
Yes.
it was such a fight or flight response that it was just food right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had any awareness around what I was thinking, like the thoughts that were triggering that eating, what I was feeling, the judgments I had about myself, the shame, like what you mentioned about being bored and then judging yourself for being bored. There's like shame wrapped up in there. Like
Yeah.
I'm a loser, like something's wrong with me, right? And those are like the feelings that usually cause us to like want to get out of ourselves and out of our
Yes.
lives and binge. So it sounds like for you, so much of it was really about just having that awareness and being able to name the feelings, understand the feelings, see where they are in your body, what are the thoughts that are causing these feelings, and just really getting like space between yourself and what was like not feeling good.
Yeah, completely.
Awesome. And what about, this comes up a lot with intuitive eating. People have such a fear of gaining weight. And, if I'm actually eating cereal and peanut butter and chocolate and champagne, I'm just going to like gain all this weight. And, you're really giving up this sense of control that you've tried to have for so long. Did that come up for you?
Oh yeah, a lot. And it took me a long time to let go of the idea of losing weight, and just like wanting to have this ideal body. And even like when I was working with you, like for several months, I still was like, okay, this is all great, but like seriously, I hope it makes me thin. And like, um, and just like always having that goal in the back of my mind. And I just like really had to shift my focus on like, okay, if this food had no calories in it, if no food had any calories in it, what would I eat? And like, what do I actually want? Like, regardless of how many minerals it has, like, what do I want to eat? And just focusing on what I want and what my body wants versus what's going to make me skinniest. And it's hard. I think like just being patient with yourself is so important, because like when that's been ingrained into your mind a million times that like thin is good, then like you have to be so patient with like allowing yourself to really take a lot of time to let that go, because it's not going to happen in overnight or a few weeks or maybe even a few months. Like it takes a long time. And yeah, I think like filling up my life with like these body positive type of things like in my Instagram feed, and like getting rid of all these like Fitspo accounts or like here's how to eat the cleanest meal on the earth, and just getting rid of that, because there's nothing wrong with like a fitness Instagram account, but it's not doing anything good for me. So like I just had to get rid of it. So just really being like mindful of what's helpful and what's not. And for me, focusing on weight loss was just sabotaging me completely.
So you really felt like you were able to put weight loss kind of on the back burner and like really just focus on your relationship with food.
Yeah, eventually I was.
Yeah.
Just really having to like, and it took just like constant reminders, like through every single meal, I had to remind myself of like, you don't need to binge eat now. I can if I want to, but I don't need to, because like I'm not going on a diet after this meal. Like I get to keep eating chocolate and Reese's cups all day if I want to, but like I don't need to do it all right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it such an amazing, I love that point when I work with clients where they realize like that they don't need to go, they're not going back to dieting. And it's like, no, this is like how you can be. Like this is like for the rest of your life you get to do this. And it's just it's so awesome, because I remember what that was like for me when I was like, oh my God, I'm really done. Like I'm really done with dieting. And I think like mentally you understand that first, but like your body doesn't get that yet, and like all
Yes.
these little parts of you don't quite aren't sure yet that that's happening, and then like over time they all like everything like makes sense, and your body's like,
Yes.
oh, okay, this really is happening. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And so what are things like for you today?
Ooh,
And also,
today.
people I think have found it really helpful to hear how long it's taken, like how long it kind of took you before things clicked, and then like how are things today?
Yeah. Um, I think like for how long it took me for self-care to really become a regular practice in terms of like in terms of my relationship with food and being able to like really counsel myself through those difficult moments with food. That took that was probably like 5, 6 months. And I think it wouldn't have taken me that long if I had let go of the idea of weight loss earlier.
Mm.
But it took me a long time. Um,
And that's kind of the same amount of time you'd say it took you to stop binging.
yeah, maybe a bit less even.
Mm-hmm.
The binging might have stopped before that. Um, and I think like with time, like I have read just so many books. I've really just like showered myself with information about self-compassion and like dealing with inner critics and things like that. Um, and so now that's just like a regular thing for me. I'm like always reading these books about this stuff because it's like so fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
And today I'm much better able to recognize like what types of foods I like and what I don't like. Like, and now I know I never ever get the urge to binge anymore, which is like crazy to me. Like I used to fantasize about binge eating and like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like I wish I could get like a full pizza and like a dozen donuts and just like eat all of them. And now
Yeah,
it's like that sounds awful. Like
yeah,
I would feel so bad
yeah.
physically. And so like I don't ever think about binging anymore. And anytime that I do like overeat or eat emotionally, like it's a choice. And like I can say, oh, you know what, like this ice cream is so good, and like I'm full, but I want to eat a little bit more because it's delicious. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a choice. It's not like, ugh, I suck and I'm always going to be binge eating.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I'm just able to make a lot more choices about like what foods I want to eat in the moment that are going to make me feel good holistically, and like make me feel good emotionally and mentally and physically, and all of that. And then also just like a huge element of like not caring if I'm not eating the healthiest thing in the world. And I don't read the ingredient label on everything anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and like if I have to eat dinner later than usual, I used to be such a stickler about like I have to eat before 7 p.m. because my body needs to fast for this many hours, whatever. Like now, like if I have to eat dinner at 9 o'clock at night, like okay, like I don't care, and
Mm.
it's so freeing to not care.
Mm.
Um,
Amazing.
yeah, so it's just like a life guided by so much more freedom and intuition versus like rules and fear and unhappiness. And
Yeah.
just like so many things have changed outside of food. Like I just give myself permission to do so many more things now. Whereas before it was like, I'm not allowed to feel good in a bikini because my body doesn't look good. And now like it's a choice about whether or not I want to feel good in my body.
Mm.
And
I
like,
love that. So
yeah,
you're yeah, so you realize that you are allowed. Like you're the one that's giving yourself permission to feel good in a bikini or not. And
yeah.
you always were the one that was giving yourself permission. You thought that it
Mhm.
was like you just weren't allowed because you didn't look good, but it's really your choice.
Yes. Yeah. And like I get to choose whether or not like when I last year like I started to take dance classes because I've always wanted to, but I'm like I'm not good enough at dancing. And which is like a belief. Like it's not like no one told me I'm not good enough at dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I made that up. And
Mm-hmm.
like so I started to take dance classes, and like it doesn't matter if I'm not the best person there. Like I'll probably never be the best dancer on the earth, and like it just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And like but I just gave myself permission to do something that I wanted to do without caring about whether or not I'm the best at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you feel toward your body, do you feel like you have just a much better like body image and the way you kind of see yourself?
Yes, I have like so much more of like a spiritual connection to my body, and like I spend like a lot of time naked these days, which is really amazing. Like before I couldn't stand to see my body in the mirror, or I would spend like an hour just like pinching at my stomach. Um, and now like I just like love my body. Like she does everything the right, like the way that she's supposed to, and just recognizing that like when you're binge eating, like that's just your body asking you to like please stop putting me through a famine. Like and that's it. And just like learning to trust that your body is going to be exactly where it's supposed to be. Um and like yeah, my like I don't have abs the way that I used to, but like I feel 1,000 million times more beautiful and sexy and confident in my body than I ever have. And like I just like wake up every morning and like I like look at my stomach and I'm like, oh, it's so cute. Like I love it.
I love that. And I love that you just said like you don't have abs the way that you used to, but you just love your body. Like even though your body might not look exactly the way it did when you were, working out all the time and being really hard on your body, that doesn't like that's just so clearly not what gives you that body confidence. It's comes from you and your relationship with it. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so amazing, Kyla. This is like so awesome to hear. So these other women that are listening to this, many of them are not yet in your shoes. They're still struggling with their relationship with food, binging, body confidence, all of that. And they're probably like, oh my God, I want to be where she is. So what are some of like your biggest tips for women who are where you were, 6 months, a year ago, whatever it was?
I would say it's really important that like every time you do experience a binge to really go through like sit down and journal what's going through your head, because I think it's easy to like even if you are on a journey with healing binging, then it's easy to just say like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try not to do that again. But instead of like trying to force the binges away or just hope that they'll never happen again, like to really go through and like what is going through your mind. And one thing that was helpful for me was like to journal out what my inner critic was telling me, and then what like my inner wisdom was telling me, or my intuition or God, like however you want to put it, what that voice was saying. And that was so helpful to me to hear like all these insane things that were coming from my inner critic, like really, truly insane. And then hearing like not the logical side, but just like the compassionate side of my intuition, and just knowing that like this is happening because my body's trying to tell me something, and like there's something I'm still not, that I'm not embracing fully about myself. And that's why the binges keep happening. And I think just a lot of patience and self-trust, and not comparing your healing to another person's healing is a really big deal. Because I think I know I would read through like the intuitive eating Facebook group, and I would say like, oh my gosh, all these women like aren't binging anymore, and like they just started, like why isn't that happening for me? What's wrong with me? Blah, blah, blah. And just always criticizing myself, and just knowing that like my journey has nothing to do with theirs. And we're all going to heal at our own pace. There's no too fast or too slow. And just knowing that like you're never going to arrive somewhere. That's something that I realized like relatively recently, is like, oh my God, I'm never gonna, like these like emotional triggers that happen, like they're never gonna stop happening. Like things are always gonna make you sad or angry or whatever.
Totally.
And like just learning, and like sometimes you're gonna eat emotionally, and like that's okay. It's not any better or worse than like meditating when you feel emotional. It's just
one of your it's one of your coping mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
And
just knowing that like you're always going to be on a journey with like learning to love yourself better. Like you never like become Buddha one day, and which like I really expect it to happen. Like I'm just going to be this like ethereal, magical, spiritual being, and like nothing will ever upset me again. And I'm going to have this perfect thin body. Like you just get to keep keep dealing with things and keep understanding yourself better. And like sometimes it'll be worse. Sometimes you'll have 6 months where it's really bad. And like that's just life. It happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And what about with food? Like, if someone wants to wake up tomorrow and start going down this path, like, how do you start? What's the first step to take with food? Like, do they just open their kitchen cabinets and say, like, what sounds delicious right now? What sounds amazing?
Mm,
Like, what do you think were your first steps with food that really helped? Like, how to deal with actual food?
yeah, I think always, always, always keeping those scary trigger foods in my kitchen. That was
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Um, I know that was like one of the first things you told me to do, and I was like, I don't think so. Like, I was just so scared.
I'm such a
Uh,
stickler about that because so many things you read say, don't keep ice cream in the house, don't keep
yeah,
peanut butter in the house. And I'm just like, no, it's the opposite because I don't want people to have to live their whole lives avoiding those foods. That's not
yeah.
fun and it's just going to cause us to binge. So, yeah, keeping those sugar foods in the house, right?
hmm Um, and like it was nice for me because like I would have like several options. I'd have like cookies and cheesecake, and dried fruit. Like I wouldn't let myself eat dried fruit, so that was a trigger food. Like I would keep all these different options in my house. So then I actually got to learn like what do I want to eat? Like instead of like there's chocolate, I have to eat the chocolate. Oh my
Right.
God. Of knowing like, oh, do I feel like eating cheesecake today? Or am I feeling some dried fruit? Do I want to eat ice cream? Um, and like I actually got to learn like what my body's craving at different points in the day and things like that. And then eventually like even if I do binge on like a whole jar of cookie butter, which I did many times, like
I remember,
um
yeah.
yeah, like just going back and like buying another jar and making sure it is always there. And then eventually like you just don't want it anymore because you know, or like not that you'd never want it again, but you don't want to binge on it because like the emotional trigger of like, oh my God, it'll disappear after today, then you just know it's
Yeah.
always there and like you just eat it when you want it versus having to eat it all the time.
You're continually, and by buying it over and over and over again, you're showing yourself, no, I'm going to keep giving this to you. Like I'm never going to put you on a diet again. You're like reassuring yourself over and over and over again, you're not going on a diet again. You're not going on a diet again. And eventually that need to binge just quiets because of that.
Yes, completely. Yeah. So that was really important for me to just like have the foods around all the time and then it wasn't scary anymore to be around them because it really was like just being around a plate of chocolate chip cookies was like anxiety inducing. Like I really felt nervous and uncomfortable and like I had to eat all of them and if other people are around like oh my God are they going to judge me like I really want to eat this whole plate and
Yeah.
um yeah and just it really helps you just feel so calm around food. It's so reassuring.
And what about when you first started? How much did you pay attention to hunger and fullness versus just letting yourself like have whatever you wanted to have? I know
Mm,
that's another big question that comes up.
yes, that was really hard. It took me paying attention to hunger and fullness wasn't as difficult for me because I mean it still like took some time, but I think it was a bit easier. Like I was able to use like your hunger and fullness scale that you talk about and it was kind of amazing to me to realize that like I eat during so many times of the day when I'm not hungry. Not out of like binging, but just like I have to eat now because like now is like when you're supposed to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would always eat lunch right at noon because that's when your body's burning the most fat according to like I don't know what. Um and I realized like I'm pretty rarely hungry at noon. Like I normally like need a couple more hours. And just realizing like how many rules I was putting on myself, like things just really start to come up. But anyway, I think hmm, I really had to like sit with myself and think about like do like if there was some kind of food around and I wasn't hungry but I was like craving it anyway, I would let myself eat it or like try some of it. And then like if I really wanted more, then I would eat more. And it's a hard thing to like to learn, I guess, to figure out whether or not you truly want it or if it's just like binging. But just really like taking some quiet time for yourself and thinking like, am I eating this because it's here and like I feel like I have to? Like, what is the energy around it? Or is
Yeah.
like this truly delicious and like I want
Yeah.
more of it?
Is it
Um,
coming from like a fearful place or a loving
mm,
place? Yeah.
totally, totally. And that's something that just like takes time to cultivate, like how to access that intuition. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so impatient with myself for so long, but like it, you really just have to like relax into it, and it really does come. You just really have to trust that like the answers will come to you.
Mm, I love that. Amazing, Kyla. I could like continue like picking your brain for another hour, but I won't because I know people like short videos. So, thank you so much. Is there anything else, any like final thoughts that you feel like you really want to share that you didn't get a chance to say?
Hmm. I think it's just important to remember that like as far as your relationship to your body goes, it is just your body and like it is not a reflection of who you are. And I know so much of like what we hear is like your body is a reflection of your lifestyle or like you are what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just there's so many more important things going on than what your body looks like. Like, oh my God, if you've ever like injured yourself, then you just know like oh my God, like your body heals itself and it's amazing. And your body's just always looking out for you and always trying to do the best thing. And it's so important to just like return some of that love.
Mm. Mm. Love
Yeah.
it. All right. And where can people find you?
Yes. So they can find me on my website is one place, which is Kyla, SW, KYLASW.com. So I'm also a health coach.
Yes.
Jamie has inspired me so much that I became a health coach. And they can find me on my Instagram. I'm very active on my Instagram, which is my full name, which is Kyla So-Called Ward, which
I'll
you
link
will
to
see.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on my Facebook page, which is also under that same name. Those are where I'm most active.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I'll link to all that for everybody. And
Awesome.
it was so fun to get to chat with you.
Yes.
And Kyla actually lives in Israel, but she's back in the States right now. So we squeezed this in while she was back. But thank you so much again. And this was absolutely incredible. And I know so helpful for so many people. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I hope it was helpful for people.
Thanks, Kyla.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.